In this video, we're going to talk about packet sniffing and most importantly, how to do that packet sniffing with a program called Wireshark. So in a typical networking environment, you have computers, as you see here, that are connected to a network switch. Each computer is plugged into its own port. Normally, when you send data traffic, it's going to go from your computer into that port and traffic received will come back. In a normal situation, that is the only traffic in which you can intercept or see. And that is because your computer can only see network traffic coming in and out of one port, because in switch networking, that's how networking works. If you are an administrator and you're concerned that this particular computer here, there might be something inappropriate going on, or there might be something that you need to do some analysis on, it is possible for you to sniff that traffic without being on the machine. And what you would do is you would have another computer plugged into the switch, and you would set up between this port here and this port here something called port mirroring, or a span port. And this particular then port would capture the traffic that's going from here, and it would also come through here. So you can simultaneously view this traffic without interrupting the flow of any traffic normally. When you capture traffic, to capture all the traffic coming in and out of your computer, that is called what's called promiscuous mode. That means you can see and capture all that data traffic. You can also filter that traffic that's coming in and out. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at how to look at this traffic, and in this first video we're going to take a look at the basic elements of the Wireshark program. So I already have Wireshark installed, and what we're going to do is take a little look at tour of the screen here before we get started. So once Wireshark is installed, you have your typical menu. You've got some toolbar options up here. We'll talk a little bit more about display filters. Any previously versions of Wireshark captures, and that's what is called capturing the packets that you've made and saved, are going to be available here. Down here is where you identify what it is you're going to capture, or the interface in which you want to capture. So you can see that I have a bunch of interfaces showing here. I actually have more. I can have my virtual, because I have VMware installed here. If I wanted to capture virtual traffic, I could take that off. I could look for external traffic, which is USB, which is capturing USB traffic coming in and out of the computer, or I can just look for wired traffic. And if I want to look at what's going on my computer, then once I start, that traffic will be, you'll start to see what are called little spark lines of traffic that are flowing through here. Now, in addition to capturing traffic from this main screen, you can actually bring up the user's guide to Wireshark. So you'll need an internet connection, and it's going to actually bring up the Wireshark user's guide. So if you wanted to take a time to read or look at some specific information, all the menu options are displayed here, and all your basic information on how to use Wireshark, especially on the interface, would be located in here. You can also go to the Wireshark Wiki. And the Wireshark Wiki is going to give you a lot more resources, including, one of the things that I like are a lot of sample packet captures that have already been made. So if you wanted to learn about something, say for example voice over IP traffic, and you don't have voice over IP, you could download some of the samples that are already on here. So the wiki has a lot of information. You can actually go through the recent changes, look for things, and so forth. And also on this main page, Q&A, if you have a problem and you want to get some help from the community. Wireshark has a very active community. I can sort it by date, activity, somebody's having some problems. You can see this one right now is sorted by activity. I could also sort it by date. And if you become an expert in Wireshark, you may be one that would be responding, or perhaps you just have a question yourself. So that's the Wireshark Wiki. And then we also have a mailing list. And so if you want to stay up to date with what's going on Wireshark, you can subscribe to any of these mailing lists. This one I get a kick out of from Masochist, Wireshark Bugs, and you notice that it would have a high volume of emails that you would be receiving should you subscribe to that. Okay, so let's go back to the main Wireshark interface. What we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and we're going to start a Wireshark capture. And I'm just going to capture all traffic, and then we'll stop and take a look at the some of the information that we see. So down here under Ethernet, I'm going to go ahead and capture the traffic off my Ethernet controller. So I'm just going to double click. And within seconds, you're going to see the traffic that is now flowing through my network interface card. So I'm going to let it gather some traffic a little bit. As you're looking at this, notice you're seeing some different coloring options going on, and all this is customizable, and we see a couple panes of data. And down at the bottom, it says Ethernet live capture in progress. Now I'm going to stop this live capture. So up on my toolbar, the easiest way to do that is to click on the big red X square, and that will stop the capturing of packets. So let's take a look at what we're seeing here as an overview, as opposed to looking at the very specific data at this point. So up here at the top, this first column, you see numbers. This is the sequencing of the packets. So by default, it is going to put these packets in the order in which they were received. All of this is customizable. If I would prefer to look at by IP address that was something where it was sent from, I can click on that, or send to, protocol, length, and so forth. So I'm going to go back and just sort it back by the order in which the packets were received. There are 3 different panes here. What you're seeing up here is the pane that's showing the data as traffic as a whole. This second pane, or this middle pane, is the pane that is showing the specific packet that I'm actually clicked on, which right now is packet number 6. And then down here, it's showing the actual data, what's readable in that data anyway. All this is customizable, as you'll see in a minute. I can also change the screens and make them smaller. I can make them like this. And if I wanted to just focus in on this section here, I can just double click on packet 6, and that's going to open up a new window where I can then further break down that particular frame of information. Also, other things we want to look at down here at the bottom on the status bar, it's the temporary name right now of this PCAP file. The NG, by the way, stands for Next Generation. It's one of the newer versions of Wireshark. Over here, it tells me that this packet capture consists of 678 packets. Right now, all of them are displayed. That means I have not filtered my view, and no packets were dropped. And up here, I can restart the capture if I want to save it. It'll ask me if I want to save it or move on. Of course, we're already stopped. I can come in here and just click the arrows to go to the next packet, to sequence it through. I can also go to a specific packet. So if I want to go to packet number 400 over here, I can just type in packet 400, and now you can see that I'm down here on packet 400. I can search for information. We'll take a look at that a little bit later. I can find information based on the text or string data, hex data, display filter, or regular expressions. I can also go back up here, go to the last packet, go to look at my coloring rules. I can zoom in, make it a little bit easier, or zoom out. And that's some of the basic information. Now, let's take a look at a couple other things that we can do. So right here, this display filter, this will allow me to, I'm going to cancel out of the find. This will allow me to search or only show certain information. And we'll get into filters a little bit more detail, but just to give you an idea of what this is. Maybe I want to look for just information dealing with ARP traffic, IP to MAC resolution. So I can click up here and I can just start typing. Now notice that when I press the first letter, I get a little pop-up. These are already some filter information that I can choose, or I can scroll down through here and look for other protocols. But what I want to point out to you is that this is right now red. That means that what I have typed is not a valid filter. So I'm going to keep typing. I'm going to go RP, and notice now it has turned green. That is because Wireshark has recognized this as something that would be valid to filter for. So if I want to look at just ARP traffic, I'm going to use the right arrow here to the right of the filter line. And you can see now that the only information that I have in here is ARP traffic. Also down here at the bottom, back on the status bar, you see my total packets again, but this time 10 of them are only displayed, or 1.5% of the overall traffic. So that's a nice way for you to actually, focus in on specific types of information. We can sort by only traffic by a certain port, IP address, and so forth. And we'll take a look at that a little bit later. But right now we're going to go ahead and clear the filter. To do that, you just click on the red X on the filter line and you're back to displaying everything again. Now I can come in here and I can go Edit, Preferences. And when I bring that up, I can change the appearance. So right now you can see that these are the default columns that are displayed. We have the default fonts and colors, and then the layout. So this is what we were looking at earlier. We've got the default layout, which is 1, 2, 3. In pane 1 is the list of the packets, pane 2 is the details, and pane 3 is the bytes or the data of that packet. If I wanted to look at it in this format, I can say that, let's just try it. Let's just go to OK. And now you can see that I've said, here's my packet list, but I didn't put anything in panes 2 or 3. So I'll go back to Edit, Preferences, go back to my layout, and I can actually choose, again, what I would want in those particular options. So I'm just going to go ahead and use pane 1. And I can add other information in here. And as we get more forward in our learning of Wireshark, we can see how some of these other things work. Okay, so that's some of the basics. Now I can also come in here and double click on one of these Wireshark packets. And when you do that, you notice that there's a bunch of different information in here. Some of this will be fixed, like the first 3, but the others are going to be dynamic based upon the type of protocol. So you can see they're always going to have an option or a section for the frame, and it tells you what frame number, how many bytes it was, how many bytes captured, and again, what interface that you captured it from. The Ethernet information is always going to be providing you with your MAC address, your source, and your destination. So I can see that the source MAC address is listed right here. I can expand that out, and I can also see my MAC address listed right here. Now on the IP protocol, this is going to tell me it's version 4. This is an IPv4 packet, and it's going to give me some other information, things that you would normally see in the packet section of a packet itself. So if you're going back to your OSI model learning, this is information that you would see in the network layer. And for example, the time to live value is also set in here. It also identifies which protocol you're using. If you recall, protocols are either going to be TCP or they're going to be IP. In this particular example, we're using a UDP. I'm sorry, not TCP or IP, but TCP or UDP. Connection oriented or connectionless. So this is an UDP, and I can see that there's the source port, destination port, the length, and then the next section will be whatever protocol that the packet happens to be. In this case, this was what was called a simple service discovery protocol. All right, so let's close this one and let's take a look at something else. Let's take a look at an HTTP packet. And you can see in this time it is using transmission control protocol. Again, source port, destination. It's also using hypertext transfer protocol, and you can see some information regarding that. What's also nice too, you can see that this was actually a response, and if you want to know where the initial request was, it would be listed in here, and you can actually click and go to frame 20 to see the actual request that made this. And then if there's any other information, in this case XML. Let's look and see if we have any DNS traffic. So I'll type DNS, and we do have a little bit of DNS. So to give you some information here, if I double click on this packet, I can see that I have a section here called domain name, and this one was a query, so it was asking or responding in this case because it was an answer. So the query was for a website, and then here's the answer, and it's giving you the answers. And if you have learned about DNS, you'll recognize CNAME and A as DNS record types. This is the alias or canonical name, and A is an IPv4 address. But for this particular IP address, it's saying that you're getting the address from Skype data, PRD coleus14.cloud.net, and there's the IP address that the information request was responded to. if you notice on this particular packet, if I double click and bring it up, we are able to discern what some of this raw data actually is. But most of the data is not going to be as easy to see here, especially when it's encrypted. Okay, now another little interesting tip before we go any further is, let's say that perhaps you're looking at a packet and you want to come back on it later and you want to maybe ask somebody a question or something that you're not sure of. Let's say that you don't know what this client hello packet is all about. So I'm going to double click on it or just click it to select it actually. So I'm on 595 and I don't want to remember packet 595. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to edit and I'm going to put a comment inside this packet. And in here I'm going to say, what is a client hello? And I'm just going to type my name here because it's going to be easier for me to see this in a few minutes. And I'm going to click OK. And now I placed a packet on here, a comment on this packet rather. And now I'm like, oh, what packet number was that? So you can filter for just packets that actually have recorded comments. So up here, I can type PKT underscore. And if you look, there's actually a filter called packet comment. And I can click go, and here we go. There's 595. Here's the packet comments, and I can actually see the actual comment. Doesn't affect the data or anything in the packet. It's just like a kind of a post-it note on the inside here that you can come back on and take a look. All right, a couple other just overview things I want to point out. With a lot of the buttons that you see here, you can also do on the menu. But a couple things that you might like. For example, under statistics, there's some great reporting information that you can get here. So let's look at the first one, the resolved addresses. And this will show me all the resolved hosts, but the addresses of what they resolved to. So you can see it even will look at these MAC addresses and it's picking up who is the vendor of that MAC address. And if you're wondering how it knows that, if you don't know this already, in a MAC address, the first three sections are always what's called the organization ID, and that is actually from the manufacturer. So if I have a specific manufacturer, then it would show me that there as well. So that's the resolved addresses. I can look at the ports, and again, packet file, capture file comments, but I didn't really put any on any of those resolved. All right, another interesting one here, I can look at the, down here, IPv4 statistics. And if I just say on destinations and ports, for example, bring that over here, and I can see that of all of them, there were 668, because I was only using IPv4, no 6. How many of them went to TCP port 443, which is your SSL? How many of them went to UDP port 1900? We saw that earlier, 15 of them. How many went to a specific IP address and a specific port? And I can actually go in here and make a filter that says, show me everything with the IP address of this and a certain port. So I can see, I only want to look at this IP address and only port 53, then I would be able to see just those three in there for that particular IP address. I can also come in here and let's go back to, this is an interesting one. Let's go back to DNS. And I can come in here and go to my statistics and go down to the DNS statistics. And here's where having the display filter, well, in this case it wouldn't matter, but here's the total DNS packets that went through, the average information, the query responses and types. You can see, what addresses it was looking for, A addresses, and so on. That's kind of interesting. I can go back to IPv4 and look at all source and destination addresses. This will let you see every IP address that was requested or contacted in this exchange of information. So these are all the source IP addresses that came in through here, and these are all the destination addresses, everywhere that this particular person was going to. So if you had a question about where somebody was going, you can actually get that information right from here. And you can also see the count. So I can see that there were 13 or 28 particularly out of all the traffic, 4.19% of that traffic was going to that one IP. So if you're wondering whether there's malware and it's going back to a remote bot or something like that, you can get a lot of information just by seeing what packets have been going where. And so that's just the overview of some of the things that you can see in Wireshark. The last thing is, if you want to save it, you go File, Save, and you can then choose your destination folder, of course, and then give it a name that would make this helpful. And we can call this one Practice Capture. And I can just hit Save. And I'm going to go ahead and close this capture. And now you can see it's actually showing right here on my practice capture, and I can just pull that back up whenever I want to do that. And I'm going to go ahead and close that as well. And I can also come in here and just remove this from the list if I didn't want it to actually be showing here. Oh, and one more final thing I did want to show you real quick is, let's say that I don't know what SSDP means. So I can double click on this, and down here where it has Simple Service Discovery Protocol, I can right click and I can go to the Wiki protocol page. And once I give my permission, it will take me right to the protocols, and then I can look up what these protocols actually mean. And so I can go down here to, just seeing it at the moment, but you can just pick on any protocol and learn a little bit more about the purpose behind that protocol. So it helps you learn networking as well. So we'll get into more of this a little bit later on. This was an introduction to just using Wireshark and getting an idea of where to click and how to navigate around.